In this episode, Mo and I got to sit down with Jake Welder, aka Jake motherfucking Welder. He is the host of Hard Time Podcast and a 10-year corrections law enforcement professional. He's also been a sergeant for 5 years in the corrections facility, mostly with juveniles. It was an awesome opportunity to sit down with somebody that's been doing it for that long. And we got into all kinds of topics when it comes to corrections, learned a lot. Mo and I learned a lot. I'm also going to go ahead and say that I had a lot of issues on my side with the Wi-Fi and the screen that I had behind me, my background. But Jake was a true professional and stayed on point, stayed on topic, never broke stride, and was willing to talk about his own experiences, which I truly appreciated. I hope you enjoy. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. Mo and I have the privilege to sit down with Jake motherfucking Welder. I'm pumped to have him here. He is the host, founder, I believe, Hard Time Podcast, founder, co-founder. He also 10 years in corrections and just an all-around fucking good dude. And shout out to Andy Baxter, who put us in touch with each other. So, brother, I appreciate you coming on. Love to have you on.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Andy Baxter's good people. We appreciate Drusif hooking us up, giving the shout out to a lowly corrections officer like myself to come on an esteemed podcast like this. So been doing this for a little bit and been big support of his show for a while now. So definitely love some Comm Center.
Damn right, dude. I love the concept too, where he takes it from the 911 call all the way to the end if there's a trial. And I appreciate the esteem. We're still working on getting our signage right. Ordered this one way too fucking big. So we're still working through some of the interlevel. Too big, too small. We're working on it. Awesome. Hey, Mo, get us started. Yeah, that's right.
Well, the one thing I want to touch on is again, thank you for coming on, because we have really not had an opportunity to talk to people in the corrections side of law enforcement. And I feel like that's unfortunate because corrections is almost like this forgotten side of law enforcement, but it's such a big pivotal piece of the entire process. Like we could not operate. And I can tell you, I never worked in the jail because what you guys do is absolutely impossible in my mind. So it's just, to me, to have you come on and talk to us and be willing to share a little bit about what it is that you do and talk to us about that overlooked arm of law enforcement. I'm just super appreciative, because I think as Street Tales as a whole, this is something we have really wanted to highlight and showcase so we can show the whole story, because it's not just the cops you see on the street. That part of it has such it's so meaningful, because there's so many inside within that arm of it. There's so many things kind of going on. So again, thank you for coming out and talking to us. Can you tell us why corrections? What led you down that path?
Yeah, I had never really gotten into anything like that before. Have never done anything in law enforcement. Did like construction and stuff back east before I moved out here to the Southwest. And it was just an open call for people that were interested in the position. And I figured, fuck it, let's give it a try. It sounded like the way they described it, like being in dangerous situations, being verbally abused, and, like they kind of they laid it all out there. And I was like, man, that sounds like what I've been doing for the last 10 years. I worked with a lot of ex-cons, so I felt kind of comfortable getting into a situation where I'm like, okay, now I'm going to be doing this. Like, I got little felons running around with that.
Fair enough. Understood.
But I've worked enough with people like that I felt comfortable, just throwing my hat in the ring and giving it a shot. And it really has been a rewarding career.
Yeah.
It's interesting going from talking to, because I'm the first person when they come in, as a sergeant, as a supervisor, I'm the first contact for inmates when they come in, and the first contact with law enforcement when they come into the jail, and talking to them, from their first initial 30 minutes of contact or an hour or whatever of a situation, to take that to the first, 2 to 3 weeks of somebody's experience in the legal justice system, to be taking them through that, that's what our job is to explain to them what's going on, what the court process is going to be, what the intake process is going to be, and try to get them to go sometimes from, kicking, screaming, spitting in the unit to okay, now we need to get controlled, use the daddy voice, get them in there. And then sometimes it's just a matter of change of handing off from one person to another, you can say, okay, we need a fresh start. Like we need, like you understand you're going through probably the worst day of your life right now,
Right.
but I'm here to help you through the next step. So we need a fresh start. We're going to start right now. So fresh. I'm Sergeant so-and-so, Sergeant motherfucker Welder, and I'm going to help you through, the next step of the process. So like, this isn't my first rodeo. I've been doing this for 10 years. So, if you trust me, I'll get you through this. I'll explain to you what's going on, and we're going to go from here. So it's a really unique part of law enforcement that, it doesn't get a lot of credit.
I would
Through that. Yeah. Go ahead, Mo. Sorry.
That's what I was going to say. The same thing. It's interesting how you walk through it to say you're going through the worst day in your life, and I'm here to help you. That's the part that I don't know that people realize, that corrections officers, you guys are in that unique position of, yes, you have to enforce and keep order in this place where you're severely outnumbered, but at the same time, you are there to help them kind of walk through the process and get through that and make the next right choice, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and I try to enable them, even though we're dealing with juveniles, let them know, like, I can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. Like, I really control your destiny here moving forward. Like, you need to make some good decisions, and you need to work with me because, we're going to, these things are going to happen. And you may or may not like it, but this is going to happen. So, you need to act calmly and make it your decision. That's the best way to get through this next part, because it's a lot more dignified when we have cooperation, so we always try that as plan A. Plan B, okay, handcuffs, pit guard, and restraints, we can do that. That's fine. It's a little bit more paperwork. It's a little bit more of a pain, but we'll get there. We'll get it done, but I always let them know, we can do it the easy way, the United Airlines way, but either way, you can go easily, you can go kicking and screaming. Either way, it's happening. Oh, like, work with me, dude.
Interesting. And so you said you started off or you got into the juvenile section first?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I do I applied for both juvenile and adult at the same time. Juvenile called me back first. So that's where I've been working for the last 10 years. So adult is chronically understaffed, even more so. We always have open positions, but we're not chronically understaffed. We go through portions where, we always need people. There's times where we're low on staffing and we need to hold people, but it's not every day, every shift like other facilities that we're associated with. So our staffing is better. So we're in a position at times to help out. So like when I go over, I work the maximum security units when I go over and work adult, because I'm familiar with 60+% of their clientele. When I go there, I already know the majority of the people there because they've gone from, from everywhere from paragraph to full essay. They go from, being 11, 12 years old in the system all the way up through. So they've graduated now, and they flipped that from 12 to 21, and they're in the adult system on 22-hour lockdown, and we're moving them around for stuff. So I prefer working the maximum security units when I work in adult. Yeah.
So that fascinates me because juveniles, as somebody who worked the road for a long time, are insane. I have no interest in wanting to be locked in a building with however many, I don't know what the ratio is. I know here, I think it's like 80-1 or something crazy. Now that I know you said juvenile called you first, but now having done both arms, would that still be your choice?
I think mostly dealing with the administration and stuff, yes. Okay. Because of where I'm at, a lot of it depends on who you work for. Like your agency dictates a lot of that. So I work for a really good agency, and they are completely separate arms, the juvenile and adult, where I'm at. So where I'm at is a good spot for sure. But that being said, working with juveniles can be a completely different thing, and it's things are changing a lot over the years and stuff. And it's gotten to be where, you've got to use the daddy voice and kind of bluff your way through situations a lot more, because it's gotten a lot more handling with kid gloves. It's a lot more hands off than it was when I first started. And there's a lot of situations, a lot of stuff that's changing, that's making the job more difficult. At the state level, they're constantly changing stuff, that the statutes and stuff that we have to make it more difficult. They're constantly closing facilities, which makes us, our staffing levels are the same, yet we have more and more, less and less places to put the same amount of clientele.
Right.
And then they're complaining, well, we have people with gun charges. Why can't we put them anywhere? Well, it's like, you want to grab them through the phone and say, well, bitch, you closed all the facilities,
Yeah.
but
what should we do?
You don't, but your customer service voice gets strained at a certain point,
Yeah.
And that was something in my last review. They were like, they're like, you try to be helpful and try to help people out no matter what. And it's like, well, I do try to help people out, even if it's not quite in my job description, try to give them a solution or at least explain to them why, and say, hey, if you don't like it that I don't have a bed for them, you have two options. You can either go this route and secure guaranteed spots, and this is how you go about that, or you can, talk to people at the state level and explain to them that you need more beds and you need more facilities to secure that. And until that changes, my answer is going to remain the same, and I get calls. Sometimes I get angry calls from judges and stuff saying, well, I ordered this person to go to detention. And I said, well, I'm sorry, Your Honor, but respectfully, I'm not in your district, so that doesn't mean anything to me. And I don't know if you handle contract law, but I have a contract in front of me that says that this is a per diem, and it says that per diem and it's at my discretion. It's not a guarantee. So there's no guarantee. So unless you change the wording in this contract, my answer remains the same. Respectfully, Your Honor. Like, what do you want me to say? You can call me, have your assistant call me. You can call my boss. The answer is going to remain the same. And and maybe they'll wake somebody up at, because I was working nights at the time. Maybe they'll wake somebody up and somebody else will give them a different answer. But there's a little satisfaction in telling them, right now, I'm the only person in this entire complex that can help you, and yelling at me is not going to get you a different answer. So that's just kind of how I roll.
That's, to me, is wild that they are closing facilities, because across the country, we haven't had a dip in the amount of people that are requiring detention services. So, I mean, like, to me, is it strictly a funding thing, or are they outdated? What's the purpose behind it? Because that doesn't seem useful or beneficial.
They keep meeting and saying that they can provide services with alternatives to detention. That's the big push. They're like, we can provide in-home services. And it's like, okay.
Is this just for juveniles or also for adults?
It's pretty universal. It's mostly for they're pushing it really hard for the juveniles, but they are pushing it for adults too, that they're saying, alternatives to detention, which is crazy. It's like, again, now they're saying they're pushing for these. And again, like you say, you hear gun crime, right? Gun crime is bad. We can agree that gun crime, especially gun crime with juveniles, if you're underage and you're handling a gun, that's a red flag. But I ask a lot of questions because I get a lot of shystery, a lot of underhanded people that I deal with that I get calls from the state that call me and say, well, I got a kid and it's a gun crime and he needs to go in jail. And I'm like, okay, well, with this charge, like, you wrote a warrant. Like, sometimes they'll do that. Some places they always do a warrant in order to get a juvenile in detention because they figure that will get them guaranteed detention. So even if it's new charges, they'll write a warrant. And I'll say, well, what's the warrant for? And the warrant's for something unrelated to the gun charge. And I'll be like, okay, so where does the gun enter the picture? And they're like, well, I'm like, what type of firearm is it? Well, it was a BB gun. I'm like, okay, well, where was the BB gun located? Was he in possession of this person in possession of the BB gun? Well, it was found in the vehicle. I'm like, okay, whose BB gun is it? Is it his BB gun or somebody? Well, it belonged to his uncle. I was like, okay, so that's not a gun crime, like, so
we were really reaching on that one.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the kind of stuff that, we have screening documents, screening tools and stuff that they use to find out if people meet criteria. But you got to be able to read between the lines, ask a lot of questions. And one of the benefits of doing this for a long time and working at night when there's not other people around is you learn what questions to ask and you start to dig deeper because, your bullshit meter starts going off and you're like, okay, like, what is really going on here? And again, like, when beds are precious, when we only have so much space, like, if you have an assault or something, I don't want to say keywords to get you guys in any trouble, but if you have like a certain type of assault that goes on, I need to know details,
Right.
because what type of assault are we talking about? Because it can be a big difference between a complete misunderstanding of something that's not a big deal versus a serious predator, so especially with kids.
Yeah.
So I don't condone any type of assault at all,
No.
but there's a
No.
big goddamn difference.
There
So,
is.
Yep.
Yeah.
like, especially with kids being stupid kids,
Yes, for
like,
sure.
are people playing the blanket game or are people being victimized and tied up?
Correct.
Like
Correct.
what the hell is going on here? You're like, there's a big difference. So those are the kind of things that go on behind the scenes again. And it's weird that somebody that doesn't go through, like, we go through training and stuff, but not like a big police academy. I don't have a college degree or anything in law enforcement, but I'm making these kind of calls behind the scenes. And I don't know if the community at large understands, that corrections officers and sergeants and lieutenants and stuff hold in their local jurisdiction in trying to keep the community safe and weeding through this kind of stuff to make sure that serious offenders and stuff stay off the streets, and making sure that the ones that need to be behind bars are, and doing the best we can. Because, man, do they play games with getting people putting together a safety plan and getting people right the hell out of jail.
Yeah.
But I'll put them in there. If I have the power to, I will do what I can to get them in there, at least initially.
Jake, and I apologize if there's a delay, something with my Wi-Fi, so I apologize early on now, but it sounds to me, again, both Mo and I were both road deputies, trooper, other things like that, but we basically catch the bad guy, yay, throw him in jail, but there's so much more to it. And I apologize. And I said shamefully in the beginning, when we started this, I was like, I don't know that many corrections people, at least not well enough to call them on the phone, and shame on me. That's shame on me. But there's a whole world after the fact, and one, making sure they're still treated like human beings, because innocent until proven guilty, number one. Number two, like you said, you need to educate these people on what to expect. And I guess I want to focus on that for a minute. Do you find that and I know you work mostly on the juvenile side, but speaking to both sides, does that help them calm down? I don't know a good word for what I'm trying to say here, but maybe just kind of knowing what to expect, to kind of alleviate some of the frustration or anger, like or I don't know.
It's almost like a negotiation too when they come in. Is it like that?
Yeah, Mo was also a hostage negotiator. So.
Right. And it's like, so we use like the SOTAS method. So it's like, all right, situation, right? Options, disadvantages, advantages, solution. So it's like, okay, here's your situation. You're in jail. These are your options. You can either act a fool or you can be calm and you can cooperate with me. The disadvantages of acting a fool is you're going to be in full restraints. You're going to be sitting here spitting on yourself, and, you're going to end up possibly with new charges. This could end up going to the judge, and you're doing this in 4K, high definition, multiple camera angles. The only place worse to do this right now is in the courtroom, and the judge is going to find out you're acting a fool. So, you want to do this, like, you can, but, and then the advantages of listening is I'll explain to you what's going on. I don't lie to inmates. It's a terrible strategy. I know sometimes in law enforcement, we've been known to stretch the truth a little bit or, move things around or whatever, but I never lie to inmates. I may tell them I can't tell you that, or, I could tell you, but I have to kill you, stuff like that. Classified, above top secret. We'll get into, stuff like that occasionally. Or, intentionally we'll play dumb. We'll just go, who? They'll ask about inmates that are in other, that, they know that are in other pods or whatever, and go, who? Like, who I'm talking about? I'm like, who? Like, I'm not supposed to talk about that. Like, that's confidential. Like, why are you even asking me? Like, you're making me play dumb right now. Like, I'm losing IQ points talking to you. Like, change the subject, like, but I don't lie to them, and the solution is, like, you be honest with me, I'm honest with you. Like, there's a lot of stuff like in the intake process and stuff. We're going to ask them about drug use. We're going to ask them about, their situation. We're going to ask them about gang affiliation and things like that. And it's not going to, leave the room other than for classification purposes and for the purpose of taking care of them, you know, because I don't need to drop them in a pod where they're going to get their ass beat.
Knocked off.
Like you're going to get, you know, you're going to get fucking beat on if you end up in the wrong spot. So you need to
help you.
You need to be straight with me and tell me if you got affiliation. And, you know, that's not necessarily going to get out to other places and stuff, but you need to be honest with me because we need to know for that purpose. And we need to know about your medical history and stuff for the purpose of taking care of you. I don't care what you got, man. Like, I don't care about your medical stuff is your medical stuff and it's covered by HIPAA and whatever. But like, if you know, like just fall out in a unit, I need to know, like, are you on something or do you have a medical problem? And because I'm your first responder and I need to know how to bring your ass back. So, you know, no offense, but you're going to get a little more personal with me, be a little more honest with me, maybe than you're going to be with your girl about what you got going on because we're just here to help you, you know, and it's not like, you know, and a lot of times they have complicated family situations and stuff. They'll be more honest with us than they are with their parents about stuff if they have parents in the situation, you know. And it's this weird relationship that goes on where it's like, hey man, like I've got to make sure it holds you to account, and there's going to be times where I write you up and we deal with stuff, you know, and there's going to be times where I put hands on you and you're not going to like it, you know, but at the same time I'm keeping you safe. And sometimes they try to get a little too personal and you have to keep it professional, you know, that like, you know, just because I use my daddy voice don't make me your daddy. Like I'm trying to be professional here and just do a job. I am not trying to cross that line, you know, but it's sad to say sometimes jail is better than their home situation.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's such a kind of like a unique thing. I know Tyler and I have spoken in the past that with law enforcement, working on the road even, you encounter people in such awful situations a lot of time that it creates this weird sense of, for lack of better terms, intimacy with them that they don't get anywhere else in the world. And now they're essentially living in this place. And if they don't have that father figure, they don't have that does, and especially dealing with juveniles, it definitely creates this weird space probably where they can blur the lines a little bit to how they interact with you and how they should be responding in those situations. And it is like, it's probably one of those things that you do have to make sure you are constantly, hey, this is the line that can't be crossed.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just reminding them like, hey man, like we can be cool, but we're not that cool. Like, you know, we can get along and we can, you know, this is your temporary domicile, but it is not your house. Like, you know, sometimes I got to be reminded, you know, this is my house. Like the rules are here for a reason, you know, but also it's a balance because you don't want to be on them so hard that they do live there. So you have to it's a little give and take. It's a delicate balance. Yeah. And it's something that officers struggle with a lot.
I'm sure, especially that part of it, because I think even like on the road, we see officers. I was a trainer for a while, and I would see you get the new guys and they either come in where they get into a situation and they say things to people and they start out at 100. And where do you go when you start out there? You know, and I would try to tell them, we start out here so that if I have to go somewhere else, I can go somewhere else. But if you start out at 100, you're going to fight. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it because you've painted that person into a corner, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'm very careful, like when we have that conversation about, you know, because I get called to situations where somebody's being uncooperative or saying basically like, I'm not locking up. I'm not going to comply, you know, basically I want to dance. And they're just sitting there being obstinate and just saying, I'm not doing anything. And I go down there and the conversation I have with them, you know, there's like a lot of undertones. Like you want to come to them from a place of respect because a lot of them are ganged up and stuff. And respect is a huge deal to them. Right. So I want to talk to them respectfully, you know, but I basically tell them, listen, like, you know, if you want to walk out of this situation, you know, with it being your idea, then this is what you need to do because it's your idea. And then you can man up, walk into your cell with your chin up, acting like it was your idea because nobody in your position, I think, wants a middle-aged man, It's not dignified for a middle-aged man to drag him to a cell,
It's not.
because I'm not gonna ask these other people over here to assist me to take you
I'm
to
gonna
your
do
cell.
it.
I'm gonna do it myself. So it's gonna be you and me, and it's not gonna be dignified, and you're going to your cell.
Yeah.
So, you have some options, you have time, but time is limited. Time is running out, and this
Yeah.
is what's happening. So it's basically, hey, you don't want to look like a bitch right now. Is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like,
It's true.
I'll make you my bitch, and you got 30 seconds. It's basically what you're saying without saying it.
Right.
Because you want to be very careful about how you say things, but
Yeah.
telling them, like, again, easy way, United Airlines way,
Yeah.
but you have to tell them, in a respectful manner. And I'll tell you 80+% of the time they walk to that cell.
And I think
And
that
a lot of
comes
the
from,
times, it's, I'm not telling them anything different than the officer. A lot of times it's, I don't know, sometimes it could be the mannerism or the person, but I think a lot of it is just, the sergeant bars get reception, like they just feel heard, and, they feel like the supervisor came down to me and said that respectfully, so I'm going to comply.
So you were saying, you think that when you interact with people that sometimes it's the bars and things like that, but I think there's a couple different things that come in play. I think that it's being the supervisor and providing that respectful interaction is part of it, but I think the other part is having 10 years worth of experience. You tend to I think the 10-year mark is that sweet spot too, where we tend to start learning how to talk to people and realizing when we are willing to or when we have to push the envelope in that particular situation. And I think the last piece is these are a lot of times, especially with juveniles, I see they aren't empowered with being able to make choice. In many cases, it's things just get kind of crammed down their throats, whether it's their living situation, whether it's the abuse situation they may be dealing with, things like that. So when a person of authority comes in and gives them choice, I think sometimes there's some psychological parts that are at play that kind of that yield to be positive. Would you think that could be part of it?
It could be, yeah. And I think it's sometimes I give them the illusion of choice too. Try to
Of
give them
course.
like here's your choices, but most of them suck for you. But at
Yeah.
least it's something.
But you get a choice.
I give you options at least. Yeah. They're not great options, admittedly,
No.
but at least they're options. I try to give them the way out, but yeah, trying to give them a way out that saves a little bit of face, because a lot of times this stuff is playing out in front of the entire cell block. And whenever possible, I try to bring them out of that situation too and talk to them one-on-one when they're having breakdowns in situations. And 9 times out of 10, they break down. Because they're under immense pressure as young people. I don't care if they're, 12 or, 18, being in the justice system and looking at possibly some serious time. We have a lot that get charged as adults and that are like looking at high felonies and multiple felonies and stuff. So, we have everything from kids that rolled their eyes at the judge that are in there for a week, to people that are looking at, 25 years. So,
damn.
Yeah, it's quite a melting pool of people. So you have to and I know a little bit more about people's cases and stuff than the standard officer walking through there. So I will keep that stuff in mind when I'm dealing with them and let them know, like, hey, man, like, I know court was rough. So I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway here, but you got to actually start to act correct though, too. Like, I understand you're upset, but come on, man. Like, this is getting to be a little, like, I got a job to do too, and this is a little fucking ridiculous. So we gotta come to an impasse here, and something's gotta give. So this is where we're gonna be at. This is where we meet in the middle, and then they try to give me some kind of sweetheart deal that's not gonna fly. And I tell them, like, no, this is not like the movies. That's not how it works. This is not Goodfellas. I don't care how many times you guys have watched it. That's not how this is gonna work. So
there, I wanted to touch on a couple other things, and I'll start with a story, but the medical side of corrections. I remember I wasn't involved, thank God. They brought an individual in, and this was an adult side, and they thought he was a drunk, being an asshole. I think he ended up, like, he got strapped to the chair. he was in solitary, like all this shit for like 4 days, 3 or 4 days, something like that. Well, come to find out, dude was going through a stroke or had a stroke or some shit like that. It was a big fucking deal. And everybody kind of was like, yeah, well, at one, that sucks that it happened, but also we're not medical professionals. And again, there's a lot to it. And I'm not trying to dig into the weeds on strokes and stuff, but the dude was being non-compliant, being an asshole, understanding he was having a stroke. I understand all these things at one time. But on the correction side, is there any, maybe from when you started to now, is there any advance in training on how to recognize, like, hey, this isn't a drunk, it's diabetic shock, or it's a stroke? Is there any training that goes on in that? And then what is your liability?
For that, a lot of it, we defer to the medical staff. If anybody's having anything, they do tell us, like the face, they do the standard drooping. And it's the drooping, all the standard stuff with the, first aid and stuff with the strokes and stuff, and recognizing the signs, where to get the basic, first responder stuff that most people do. There's nothing super advanced on that. But again, a lot of it comes from, years on the job. We've had people have strokes. We've had people OD. We've had.
In the jail?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Shit. Okay.
Yeah, we've had people have cardiac arrest and stuff in the jail and have to be carted out. So we've dealt with all those things before, seizures, things like that. So we have people come in sometimes a lot of that gets dealt with because we kind of have an idea. A lot of people come in from court. So we have an idea, like, okay, they've been through probation. Probation already knows their history, and they're going to let us know, hey, this person has some serious health problems, and for HIPAA reasons, but we're still going to share this with you because it pertains to safety and care. You're going to be their custodian for the next 2 weeks or whatever. Like in our area, they can only be held for so long. It's like usually 2 weeks between court appearances. So
Got it.
They can be held for longer periods, could be up to like 8 weeks or something like that if they have a court appearance scheduled. But the standard is like 2 weeks in jail, and then they have to be seen again. And they have to show progress with their case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So their options basically for juveniles are treatment. They're either going to have inpatient treatment where they go home and they're going to have inpatient treatment, or they're going to have outpatient treatment where they go home and they just go to a treatment center and drug and alcohol or whatever, therapy, whatever. Or they're going to have inpatient where they go and they stay there for, 30 days to 6 months in a treatment center, or they're going to have a secure treatment, where they do like a prison term, and they're going to be doing all that plus individual and family counseling and stuff during like a prison term. So they're always going to be getting some sort of services while they're in jail as a juvenile. Or while they're in the juvenile justice system, they're always given something.
Jake, do you mind? Cause I'm just thinking of these thoughts, and my mind's racing now that my Wi-Fi connection is working. It connects to my brain. Could you explain the difference? Cat Williams famously said, 19 felonies, no convictions. He's been to jail, never prison. There's a difference. Can you explain the difference? And my jail, prison, and I don't even know what's beyond that. I don't even know where it goes from there. But do you mind explaining, one, the differences and what I guess that means
Sure.
to an individual?
So jail could be anything from your local drunk tank that they have to like a lot of times it's like a county jail, city jail, something like that, a municipality, smaller. A lot of times they're smaller agencies like that. You could have larger, depending on the size, from a jail to a prison it's not always the same. It doesn't say the jail's always smaller than a prison, but generally speaking. But a jail is generally for people that are like pre-adjudication, so they're not adjudicated as guilty yet. So a prison is when they're doing a prison term is when they're already guilty. So they're doing like a long term, like, your jail is like when you see your drunk tank on, TV when somebody gets caught up and, like the Replacements when they're singing Aretha Franklin and they're doing that, that's your jail. Whereas, in the Replacements versus like, the Green Mile would be a prison. That's like death row, supermax. Those are your prisons, generally speaking. Now, your prisons, you also have like treatment centers and stuff that are kind of in between. You could have short term or long term, and they would be kind of in between. They also have secure treatment centers and stuff that could be, they're kind of a separate deal and could be anywhere from a short term, like there's diversion programs for like drug and alcohol, could be something really short term, up to something like where like P. Diddy's at, like a longer term where it's more like a prison setting, but it's a diversionary, like a drug rehab that he's doing.
Gotcha.
Let me ask a question on that. When you're talking about all these different aspects of prison versus jail, do you find that the level of violence, because in my head when you said that, I'm thinking the person that is potentially facing 25 years versus the person that's serving because they've already been sentenced, is the level of violence in these two different facilities relatively the same, or is it a little bit different because there's that uncertainty in the jail setting?
It depends who you ask. I mean, the people who worked in county jails say it's more dangerous because of that uncertainty, because you have people coming in and out, and that definitely is a big thing. I mean, you have people constantly coming in, so the contraband could be pretty constant. You have contraband, the level of it getting in from intake, the potential is a lot higher. The potential from...
You brought a memory to my head, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. The potential from like places like staff or the yard could be in any of those facilities,
Right.
like coming from the yard, coming from staff, complicated ways that contraband come in will be the same in any institution. Whereas like in a prison, you know who you're dealing with, but also you have the aspect of like some of those people have nothing left to lose. You have people in those facilities who are, if you have 3 life sentences, what's the point? I mean, I just covered a guy that was in he was in for murder, and he just decided to take a couple of predators off the board because he was like, in for a penny, in for a pound, fuck it. So he just killed 2 people, and then he walked up. And then he walked up to the guard station like this, like, "Hey, I just killed 2 people. You better arrest me." He was in California. And they're like, "Yeah, you're just joshing." And he's like, "No, seriously, I beat them to death. You should go check their cells." And sure enough, they were beating both of them to death with his cane that the California Department of Corrections had issued him.
Wow.
So,
God damn.
That shows why classification is a huge deal. And he had told his therapist he had homicidal thoughts and he was going to kill one of the dudes that day, and nobody took him serious. So,
and did you say it was because they were predators, like
they were
sexual predators?
They were child predators. And one of them was watching a children's show, getting his jollies off of it in front of the other inmates. And he said,
I can't say that I'm mad at him for it.
I know. And I didn't get into the details of like what he was in for and stuff, but it's like kind of like, man, I wonder what he was in for. Yeah. Wait, he was in for murder, but it's like, you kind of wonder if it was one of those like, legally reprehensible but morally justifiable type deals. And you're kind of like,
dude, I've met those people, and I'm like,
should I put some money on his books? Like, maybe when he gets out of the hole, I should get him some ramen. Like, I don't know.
Something like that.
Damn.
So there's those situations sometimes where, I've had like situations where there's been an assault or something in jail and we're dealing with it and we separate them. And I'm kind of like, man, like, I got to give you a lockdown for this, but I kind of get it.
I get it.
Jake, you're speaking to me, bro, because shameless plug, it's our show, Mo, so fuck it. But Street Tales, Volume 1, book we wrote. I talk about this. This is going to be a question, but I've met people who have done bad things, but it doesn't make them bad people. And in my career in law enforcement, I've met those people as well, where I'm like, I got a bunch of stories for that, but I kind of get it. One, did you feel that way when you started? Do you feel the same way about people in jail that you did when you started now, 10 years later?
It has changed my perspective a little bit. I mean, now understanding more about where people come from, getting a lot more backstory on, but again, there's still the balance of that. Like, I didn't have the best upbringing. I mean, both my parents were alive and together my entire life, but I had stuff go on when I was a kid and stuff, and gone through hard situations and whatever. And I didn't use it as an excuse to be an asshole and just victimize other people. You know what I mean? Like, I never started a single fight, but I finished a few of them, like, I didn't use it to victimize other people. It's changed my perspective a little bit. I have a little bit more understanding, but again, like, we just had a situation with one inmate where it was a justifiable homicide. I can't get into the details, but it was like we were all kind of like, they're going to deal with the situation clinically because of the trauma that was going on in the whole situation. And it was a completely justifiable homicide.
Got it.
And it's kind of like wild when you get, even in an area where sometimes people get super liberal and crazy and whatever, when you get everybody on the same page, you can get the judge and everybody, and they're like, damn, man, like if I was in that situation, I hope I would have done the same thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? I would have protected me and mine like that, and got to give the kid props for doing something, but he's going to have to live with that for the rest of his life. You know, so the kid needs help, you know? So yeah, it has changed my perspective. Like before, you know, it's not like I ever felt like there wouldn't be a situation where, you know, you have to protect yourself and use lethal force. You know, obviously I think that's, you know, you think about that all the time, having a family and stuff, that there would be situations where you would use lethal force to protect your family, but having to do that and ending up in jail, you know, is just a wild concept.
Rough.
But you understand you roll the dice every time it's a justifiable homicide. It's still a homicide, right?
Yeah.
So,
I want to jump back. I have two questions, but I want to jump back before we go forward, if that's okay. Sure. You said you had worked with felons before. Can you talk a little bit about, we could talk, well, as far back as you want, but post high school, and then like how old you were and maybe what you were doing before you got into corrections. And it sounds like this is your career now, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that time span, and then we'll jump back to where we are now?
Sure. Just like I was helping out my family. I didn't quite finish high school because I was helping out my family and helping them out paying the bills and stuff. So I was working trade jobs, and
oh, I see.
So yeah, I was working in the trades. So working
there,
in the
baby.
trades,
Roofers and foundation. Yeah.
Yeah. And working in the trades, I worked with a lot of really good people, and, you know, not to say everybody that works in trades are felons, like the majority of them weren't, especially early on when I was like 16, 17, 18 working in the trades, they weren't. But then when I was 19, I got to work for a much larger company, and, you know, a lot of people, they were wondering why I was there because, you know, a lot of people that work there didn't really have other options, and that's why they were there. And a lot of them were, you know, ex-cons, felons, you know, stuff like that. And that's why they got the job, you know, because it's hard, hot, nasty work, you know, like I was doing commercial roofing at the time. So
brutal.
And, you know, I worked all up and down the East Coast with a lot of different companies, a lot of different people. And, you know, it was kind of rough at times, you know, you young guy coming in, working the trades, and there were older guys that wanted to prove a point or whatever, didn't like that I wouldn't take shit, I guess. And, you know, they would, you know, thought I was too mouthy or whatever. And I'm just like, hey, like, I don't mind. I'm the new guy. I'll take some shit. I'll do whatever. That's fine. I get the shitty jobs. I get it. But like, there's a line. And if you're going to go over the line, then, you know, fuck you and the horse you rode on and your mom. I don't care. You know, like,
well, let me say this. Florida, high school, and then most of college, because go to school playing sports, you can't hold a full-time job. It's not a thing, but I always wanted to work. So I did a lot of whatever they call labor ready, things like that. So I was 18, 19, 20, whatever, did the laying concrete, brick paving, framing, real basic shit. I worked for the roofing company for 2 weeks. That's a good way to learn that you're afraid of heights, because I am. So you're doing commercial roofing. That's way different. But you run across, like to your point, a wide variety of people. And I remember they called them team leads for us. Like I said, labor ready, whatever. They'd come pick us up at the labor ready spot. You'd make $100 for the day and you'd go home. They loved it because I was like, I can drive myself, and I don't do drugs. Because a lot of them, they'd pick up their team or their guys. They'd have to pick them up at jail, pick them up at the bar out back, wherever they fell asleep and shit. And then they'd work 8, 9, 10, 12, 16 hours, get their money that day and go spend it right again. And they were like, and several guys were like, what are you doing here, man? Like, this is not your spot. I was like, I just need to make money.
Right. And they didn't know what to do with me. I mean, we had a job where they needed an inside man.
Yeah.
And it was a company, like, it was a big company.
Yeah.
And you needed to be kind of PC to work for them. Yeah. So, like, I went inside and I knew enough. I mean, I grew up with like a pretty religious background and stuff, so I knew enough like to keep my mouth shut, be respectful. I did like smaller jobs and worked like with in the trades. It was mostly misogynistic males, and the only women which it was weird. Like working for that company, I got sexually harassed by a lot of females in the office, but it's a lot
Sounds right.
better. It was a lot better shape back then, but like I could go in there and be respectful and work with the people. And it was a factory where it was very warm inside. So a lot of people were like walking around, not wearing a whole lot and just being respectful, and not like oogling and not making inappropriate comments. And everybody was getting kicked out of the inside man job. So finally they were like, all right, it's your turn. You need to go in and do it. And then after I went in and did it, I got requested to come back. And they basically said they didn't want anyone else for the job because I worked hard and I had a decent head on my shoulders and I could be respectful. And they didn't know what to do with me. And it had to get up to like my boss's boss basically to tell me that I needed to stay in there, and nobody on the crew liked it. So, I had people that would, make comments and whatever, say you need to spend more time up on the roof and do all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm just here to do a job. If they want me to be in there, I'll do that. And then when I'm ready, I'll come up and I will do my job, but me being inside is what's keeping you guys on the job right now instead of getting kicked off. Like the third crew that's worked this job, 2 have gotten kicked off already.
Yeah. So
do you want to work for the rest of the summer or do you want to get kicked out?
We're not.
And then, they want to, basically take it to the parking lot. And I'm like, okay, I'm 21, 22 at this point, and this guy's like 45, and I'm like, okay, you tried to hit me over the head with a shovel when I bent over. Yeah. I saw that and out of the corner of my eye, stepped out of the way. The boss was like, I understand what you did. He's like, but could you dial it back next time? Because I need my guys to show up to work. So
I need my guy. Yeah.
He's like,
just another day at the office, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, teach him some manners, but goddamn, and I was like, okay, sorry. So
he tried to hit me with a shovel.
Yeah. I work with some rough characters, but again, like when dealing with juveniles and stuff now in jail, they say, oh, you're locked up with us. And I'm like, they don't understand who they're dealing with. Like, no, you're locked up with me, motherfucker. Like, there's a reason I'm Jake motherfucker Welder. I earned the title.
Yeah. Several times over.
Like,
Mo, real quick. Let me also say this. I actually love those jobs because I felt satisfied at the end of the day. Like you do your job and you could see the fruits of your labor. I fucking loved it. But yeah, you're working with dudes who have never washed their jeans. You don't know what funk is building up in there. And Mo, you've arrested enough homeless people, that drunk smell just coming off there, seeping out of the pores, and they're working 12 hours, sweating, drinking beer in the middle of I mean, it's fucking wild.
The road beer.
Roadies, yeah. So good. I actually did a little stint at Budweiser, and they had nickel beers, all the like brokens, like whenever they pick them up they put them in the vending machine. It was quarter beers.
Yeah, one of the first guys that I worked for, he used to get the hops. He owned a farm too, so he'd get the hops for his horses.
Yeah.
And he used to get he ordered a bunch of kegs for his family. He had a big like Swedish family. And on Friday, I was like 17 at this point, I think. The statute of limitations is up now. That was 20 years ago.
You're good.
But he would say, they would give him like the odds ones with the labels weren't quite right or the bottles weren't quite right or whatever. And he'd be like, all right, go pick up your bonus in the truck in the toolbox. And he'd have like a 6-pack of those. And that was your bonus for working the week,
Yeah.
So
that's so funny, man.
Yeah. Stuff like that, and it was like, I mean, there was a bunch of them that said like you're 18, right? And I'm like, well, and they're like, yeah, you're 18. Okay.
Yeah.
You can
Got
work
it. Yes.
Yeah. I did that. And then I was also like oil change, like a mobile lube, I can't remember what it was. That's the first time I was the kid and I loved it. I'm like learning how to change oil. Like I'm there like super excited. The 3 dudes I work with were talking about getting red opium and wild stuff. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're saying. Anyway, we'll move on. So I appreciate that because that kind of gives me some Mo agree. Well, actually both agreed. I'm not saying you have to have done the types of things or interacted with the people we're talking about. But I call it, if you have a little dirt under your fingernails before you get into law enforcement, I think it feel like it makes you a better cop because you can kind of understand and relate to who you're talking to. for the most part.
I'll say it goes along the lines like we've always said, you have to have had some experience with learning how to talk to people from various walks of life, not just from where you grew up, and because you're going to deal with people from various walks of life. So you need that for sure.
It was a study in dealing with people with difficult personalities. There was always the guy that like didn't get along with anyone, and he wasn't happy unless he was unhappy. So he was always the one that this guy and that guy, and you had to like commiserate with him to like get along with him. If I had to work with him for a day, and you're just like, yeah, okay, yeah, everybody's an asshole, yeah, okay. Yeah. You had to like learn how to like get along with them in order to get through a shift. And then the boss would be like, "You're the only one that can work with so and so," and it's like, fuck. All right, yeah, if I have to,
but I don't want to.
I don't want to, but if I have to. But you come up with strategies to work with difficult people when you're in those positions for sure, and then. It definitely helps you down the road in law enforcement.
No, for sure. I worked with a guy for a week who allegedly, according to him, was an executive for a corporation. He goes, "I'm never working for the man again." I was like, "You just work 12 hours for $60. You live in a motel." But okay, whatever, dude. I was 18. These are all allegedly. So I appreciate that. I'm going to jump back, and I'll ask this question first. Are there any types of crimes, filter this out, that either give you are respected or more understood in the jail system as opposed to types of crimes, and I think we both know what we're talking about, that you're immediately marked?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are those types of crimes that get you marked, but again...
I'm not advocating for anyone to commit crimes. It's not what I'm doing, but yeah.
But again, like, there's been this situation where we have people where we basically tell all of them, as a rule, don't talk about your charges. But like, if you're the one in there that doesn't talk about their charges and doesn't come up with a convincing story, then you basically just outed yourself as the creeper, So, we're like, come up with a convincing story and stick to it. Remember what you said and stick to it. Keep it simple and stick to it. And don't fucking tell anybody what you're here for. Because if you do, I am responsible for what happens to you when they do. Like, we will come in and save the day, but, it's going to take us a couple minutes to get there.
And a lot can happen in that couple minutes.
A lot can happen in a few minutes, especially if it's a whole cell block that don't like you. So there's definitely that. And like I said, around my area in the Southwest, there's a lot of gang activity. So there's a lot of respect for there's like a lot of drive-bys and the gang crime and stuff like that it's like comes along with the life, and a lot of people have been introduced to the life by their families and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's not that it's excusable, but it's a little more understandable, that they're being introduced to it. But they've, through the juvenile justice system, they offer them an alternative. And a very, very small percentage take it.
Gotcha. Of course. Gotcha. Now, this is going to be a two-part, but I'll ask one at a time. We've talked about mental health on this show a lot in law enforcement, and again, shame on us. Matter of fact, talking with Andy Baxter and a couple dispatchers, it's actually becoming a thing for dispatchers, but in corrections, is there any advance in dealing with mental health struggles with corrections officers, and is there still a stigma affiliated with, hey, I need a little help, I need to go talk to somebody?
There is a little bit of a stigma. I mean, in our agency, I've talked pretty openly and let people know that I've sought out help to talk to people about situations. It's like that you cope with that, caffeine and dark humor and sometimes a little bit too much drinking and, that camaraderie, that you have that understanding, mutual understanding. But like when you start telling jokes, and stories around the Thanksgiving table and nobody understands what's going on and everybody's concerned for you, understandably, it's like,
are you okay?
That might be your cue when they ask you, are you okay? That might be your signal to get some help. Luckily my agency, they do pay for the first few sessions and stuff for free. So they help you with that. And then the insurance is pretty good in helping people get hooked up with mental health and stuff. So it was just like when I was starting to struggle, it was like a bad time to struggle. It was just before like the pandemic stuff. So is when it was catching up to me. So it was just bad timing. So it took a long time to and start dealing with stuff. But just telling people like it's okay not to be okay. And if you're dealing with a chemical imbalance, sometimes it's not that you take a happy pill and you're better, but like if you're dealing with a chemical imbalance, sometimes you need some pills to help get that back right. for the time being and work through some stuff. And then maybe down the road, you can wean yourself off, or maybe down the road, therapy isn't something you need long term. Everybody's going to be different, but definitely, get some help. I talk to people come to my office a lot. My door's always open. My, phone and radio go off constantly. But I tell people, if they need to talk, like, just shut the door and talk, and stuff doesn't leave my office if it's just of that kind of nature, like it's okay, just a sounding board. But it's like, hey man, if you're talking to me about some dark stuff, like you need some professional help. Like, I can tell you, like, I've been through it, but I'm not necessarily the one to give you all the solutions to what's going on. You need some.
This is my second part.
Okay.
Mental health inside the jail with the prisoners. What does that look like? How is that? We'll focus on juveniles too, because I never even thought about that aspect. Are those services provided? What does that look like?
Yeah, they get met with. We have two separate people. One person that does we have a clinic that handles like the medical side, like that prescribes things for them.
Yeah.
And then another one that is just strictly a therapist to talk to.
Good
and
Lord.
that person deals with more of like the side, like classification for them, like who's on and off of what's their watch look like. Are they on a normal watch or close watch? Are there items they can have in their cell versus what they can't have in their cell? Are they allowed to use a razor or not? Do they have to be put on suicide precautions? When are they taken off of suicide precautions? Self-harm is different than suicide, which is difficult for some people to think of. Like, if you're cutting yourself, like obviously you're trying to kill yourself, but that's not always necessarily the case. So,
dark, bro. That's dark stuff.
It is, but it's sometimes looking for relief or a release, and not necessarily like a permanent end. It's just trying to feel something. So,
yeah, I got you.
So all that kind of stuff, goes through a therapist, and they meet either, she'll, every time she meets with them, she'll let them know, I need to meet with you next week, or I need to meet with them in 2 weeks, or follow up in a month or whatever. So some people will be weekly. Sometimes she'll meet with somebody and she's like, I need to see you in a couple of days because this person is, or I'll see them tomorrow because this person is like going through it. Yeah.
Sorry, Mo, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to say, especially talking to someone who's in a supervisory role, I think it's amazing to hear someone speak freely and say, this is what I've been through. This is what you got to be looking for, guys. Because I think so often, me being in law enforcement, I started a long time ago. I had 17 years in, and I've now been retired now for about 8 years. And it hasn't been until probably towards the end of my retirement that we started seeing those kind of candid conversations taking place at the level of like, sergeant be, hey guys, the sheriff wants you guys to know you can go get help, but it was never genuine. And to me, I think it comes across much more genuine when it is that lower level supervisor, that sergeant, that, for us, we had corporals, that lieutenant, the one that you interacted with daily, then you really trusted, in my opinion. You would start to begin to have the deputies, for us to trust the system. Without that, it was not, they just weren't touching it. And of course, we all know the end result when they don't, try to seek help for their mental health. Cops go one way. There's no in between usually with cops. So I just say that's so commendable to have someone in your position to say to people like, hey, and in this position, this stuff is hard that we deal with, and I think that's another thing that's quite often overlooked, that corrections is not an easy job.
No.
Yeah. Well, that's, like I said, if, seeing, like, talking about self-harm is one thing, seeing active self-harm, if you've ever seen somebody actively cutting open their wrists, or like using their teeth to like open their wrists and stuff in front of you, like or banging their head into the wall till it's actively bleeding. I've seen people's skulls, them bang their head open against the wall till you could see their skull, like that's not normal. I had a little mini story. I had an officer ask me, I was just walking through a cell blocks, and asked me if I could step into the cell block, and just the panic in her voice. She was a newer officer. So I walked in, and she's just like pointed in the cells, and I could see there was 2 people just banging their head up against the wall. And I looked at the one saw the blood, walked up to the other one because I could hear the thudding in the other cell. That one I could see was more advanced. So I walked into that one, and the person was just kind of like, just catatonic, just like kind of doing one of these, but would not respond to verbal commands or stop. So I just took a pillow and stuck it between the head and the wall. And I said, you see what I'm doing? Could you do that in the other cell? And call for assistance, so that we could get them, to stop, or, sometimes you have to restrain them so that they can't harm themselves, So it was just like it was a multiple people self-harming at the same time. And, it shook her up, understandably.
Yeah.
And she's like, you were so calm. And I'm like, well, it's the first time you see it. Like, you're having a normal reaction. So don't feel bad, because you had a normal person reaction.
Yeah.
Good for you.
This dumb motherfucker is still doing this 8 years later reaction. Like, I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen this 384 times, and I can't panic, because then you'll panic. So it's a little different, So I said, but you had a completely human, normal reaction. So don't feel bad, but thank you for A, letting me know, and B, following my directions. That's all we expect from you. We don't expect you to be inhuman and, be unaffected by what you see at work. Like, that is not a requirement of the job, and if what you see bothers you, you need to talk to people about it. Like, this is not normal. This is not, just because I had a everyday reaction to it doesn't mean this should happen every fucking day. This is not, I've been called disturbingly chill, a walking confrontation, a walking expletive. I've been called a lot of things. I have a very strange personality because of doing this for a decade,
How long have you been a sergeant?
5 years.
I got to tell you, man, not to hype you up on here, but awesome. Because a lot of sergeants wouldn't react that way. They'd be like, what the fuck's wrong with you? This is why you're paid. Suck it up. All the things we've all heard. Just tip of the cap, sir. That's fucking excellent. Because it doesn't make you a bad person or a bad cop because you have a human reaction to something that's not normal.
Yeah. And she ended up, working for a little while and stuff, and we miss her, but she ended up getting into doing something working with animals. She's much more suited to doing that. She's a really good person, and it's like, I don't blame her at all, because she's such a great person, and people are like, Judas, you left us, and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, if you find a better job, people are probably jealous because you found a better job with better pay, or just, you don't have to, you're not stuck here, or you don't have to, or you're just not sick in the head and still doing it for whatever reason, you still do it. Like, it's good for you. If you find another job that works for you, good for you.
Yeah.
Like, I won't tell anybody, like, that you're always welcome back. If you want a job, it's steady pay. We're always hiring, but it's like, hey, if it's not for you, I totally understand. And
huge.
Happy for her.
Yeah.
Dude, that's 100% correct. It's not for everybody, and there's no shame in that.
None. Yeah. So I have just a couple corrections questions that I've often wondered, because I know I have my opinion, but I've never worked in the jail, like I said from the beginning. When we are talking about incarceration, should the focus be more on rehabilitation, in your opinion, or punishment? I
go back and forth. I think it needs to be, the classification and case management side is super important. Mm-hmm. I have a friend she's worked in a bunch of different places and stuff, but she went to like the case management side. She worked as corrections. She's worked in other fields in law enforcement. She worked like telecommunications and stuff too. A really cool person, but like, she was an awesome case manager and like stuff, because she would like see through their bullshit. That's the thing. It's like, I totally think that for the people that need it, I think that is awesome, the rehabilitation, and to try to give them help and whatever. But the problem is cutting through the bullshit and figuring out who actually needs it, who actually is going with the program, and there needs to be accountability for that. Right. If we're going to give you a helping hand and help you up, like, you need to up the ante, you need to do the work. And if you're not doing it, then get the hell out and then let somebody else take your place, and you can do the rest of your sentence. You know what I mean? The punishment, I think we're getting so far away from that with putting people in, and there's zero consequence. I mean, it's so dangerous for the local police here to arrest people for dangerous crimes, and then they're walking the streets a couple weeks later,
Yeah.
and they're having to rearrest violent felons over and over and over and over again. And a lot of it is, it's not to do with me or the correction side. It's not to do with the cops not doing a good job. It's the judges aren't holding people to account. So, the local elections are super important for people to know what's going on in their judicial system. But who pays attention to what's going on? If people knew the backdoor deals that are going on in their local, courthouses and stuff, it would be wild. I mean, I found it at one point that and maybe it's more common than I know because I've only dealt with it here, but the prosecutor and the defense attorney for was it the state prosecutor and for the defense for the
public defender's
office, the main public defender went on vacation together.
Yeah. That happens at all levels, by the way.
Yeah. So I'm just like, we take people, literally shackle them up, take them to court, bring them back there, whatever, and we'll sit with them while these deals go on in the jury room before court even happens. And court just plays out after all these deals have already been made and everything's already been decided ahead of time. And the court is literally just a theater for what's happened because everything's been decided beforehand. So I don't think the public at large understands what goes on with the judicial system. So I think they need to, that's where a lot of that lies, is the fault for those types of things. So I think that there are definitely people that could be given a lot more help. And I think there needs to be a lot more punishment for the hardcore offenders and multiple time offenders.
We'll say, in my opinion, and I agree with like some of the backdoor things that people don't realize that are completely out of our hands. But if I were queen for a day, I agree with you that I feel like there are certain people, we should almost have a system set up with like two separate programs. One that was more for punishment for crimes that, in my opinion, there are some crimes that can't be rehabilitated, and then a rehabilitation arm for crimes that we want to be able to reintroduce people back to society and give them skills to succeed, because there are some crimes that I think people get arrested for. They come out at a certain point and they just don't know what to do because they have missed a chunk of their life where they would have been learning something. And that's where I think that kind of fails. But there's some that, no, I think we should lock them up and throw away the key. That's just my opinion, not street tales. Don't come for me because I don't care.
We could do body cams for lawyers and judges. That would be good.
Buddy.
Bro, now you're trying to get us jammed up for real.
Yeah, for real.
I'm not affiliated. That's again my personal opinion.
Love it. No,
I'm not gonna. I think they have the NASCAR jumpsuits too, so we know who sponsored them.
Something like that. Well, brother, I want to respect your time. Could you talk a little bit about Hard Time Podcast?
Yeah, Hard Time Podcast. We're on Spotify. That's our main jam. So we have some subscription only channel, some subscription only episodes and stuff. They eventually release to the general public and stuff. We have about 200 episodes out now. So yeah, so we've been going for a couple of years. We were doing like 2 times a week at one point, and then we slowed down on that.
I had to learn that lesson the hard way.
We slowed down on that, and I've been just doing this just casually, but I mean, we have subscribers and stuff, so been making sure that we pump out at least an episode a week. We've been loyal on that since we started. So Jonathan is my partner. He's been helping me out with that. So sometimes it's just me. Sometimes it's just him because I switched to days. So sometimes we get together and do an episode together. So it's like OG Hard Time. So
what do you guys talk about?
A little bit of everything. We get a lot of, I have one of the perks is we have a Instagram thread from our listeners. I have like an Instagram that they can messaging board that they talk to us on, and they suggest stories and stuff, so they let us know, or they can private message, or anybody can private message me at Jake Welder on Instagram.
Damn right.
If they want to hear something. And we eventually get to those episodes, and we've done everything from like cats in corrections and like the dog programs and stuff like that. John always loved that program. The last one I did was on Sean P. Diddy Combs at Fort Dix. So I thought that was appropriate. I don't know if they have, I'm not sure if they have bought baby oil on Canteen there or not. So I've heard some things. I heard some things about the showers though. I did hear about the showers and the Diddy's at Dick's. So I thought that was appropriate. I have a little bit of fun with that.
Yeah.
he works in the chaplain's assistant, which I think that was the same job that John Wayne Gacy had when he was in jail. So I thought that was interesting. That was interesting.
See, that's that institutional knowledge.
Right. So I did an episode on like a doppelganger where this guy went to jail for like 12 years in Kansas City for a crime he didn't commit. He actually had an alibi, and he got pulled out of a lineup. Like, he was a light-skinned black man, and he was the only one with like cornrows and a goatee.
Yeah.
He was the only light-skinned black man they put in that lineup. Like, you would the other guys in the lineup, it looked like they just Xerox. Like, those guys were so dark in there. There was no way they were picking anybody else out of that lineup.
But him.
There's no fucking way. And I'm like, I felt so bad for the guy. But again, I'm like, you were in the lineup because you were a criminal. I do, say that. But he had a dude who had almost the same first name with cornrows, light skin, and a goatee. And he ended up meeting him in jail 12 years later and getting acquitted. So,
damn.
Crushing.
That was our doppelganger episode. I did one about a guy who escaped prison, a French prison, in a laundry bag. Yeah. So
listen, that shit's coming back, bro. They just robbed the Louvre or whatever. So, movies are coming to life nowadays.
Yeah. I kind of chalked it up to maybe kind of a Goodfellas situation. It's a little weird that he got out of there on a laundry bag and he was gone on Friday and came back Monday, got caught on Monday, I'm like, and he's connected. I'm like, something smells on this one, So yeah, we do, we break down cases. I've got like a in custody death. We've done quite a few of those in custody deaths with like, a lot of positional asphyxia, stuff like that, escapes, a lot of jail shit. We've done like international stuff. Like we did, the Japanese executions, how they do that. Like, they don't tell you until like the day of your execution. Like, they're pretty cold there in the land of the rising sun. So
today's your day, bro. Let's go.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wrap, baby.
Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah. So we cover a whole wide variety of stuff. There's an episode for everyone. Dookie episode and a whole bunch of stuff. We got Code Red, Code Brown. We got all
Nope.
We got all kinds of stuff on that one. Yeah. Yeah. The Dookie episode.
That's why I never.
Nah, hell no. I used to call EMS for that.
Yeah. Yep. So, Hard Time's been going for a long time. John, he just covered Ghislaine Maxwell and her incarceration and whether, the media kind of sensationalizes a lot of stuff with hers and makes it sound like she's getting a lot of preferential treatment,
Yeah.
So he breaks down a lot of that stuff and how, some stuff that they make it sound like she has a personal puppy and things like that, and how that's not really the case. And he did an episode on that. He did one on the R word that we can't use and how that's like a big thing over in Europe and how people are getting more time for protesting it than they are for committing the actual act.
Yeah.
And stuff.
So you just cover the gambit. Damn.
Yeah, we're kind of all over the place. And like I said, we do a lot of episodes. People, like, somebody brought the doppelganger to me. They're like, man, I saw this, just a little clip on Instagram. So I looked it up, and sure enough, there was enough to do an hour episode on it. So
shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jake motherfucking Welder, Hard Time Podcast. Don't go anywhere when we're done. I got two things I want to talk to you about. Mo, anything you want to leave with?
Nope. Again, thank you. This has been very interesting from my perspective. We love to have, like I said, the full picture, corrections and, the dispatchers. There's so much that goes along with law enforcement. So we appreciate you.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me on. And if you don't mind, my listeners, they like to have a Jake joke. I always have a dad joke at the end of every episode. So
do it.
Do you guys know what the loneliest swamp is in Louisiana? Bayou Self.
Boom. Not a better way to end it, brother. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you.